Avatar: The Last Airbender is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. I watch it every year because it just does not get old. It has some of the best character writing ever, it's hilarious, the animation is incredible, and the world building makes it so there's infinite possibilities in this universe. Literally all 61 of these episodes are good in one way or another. There's going to be some really good stuff, ranked pretty low, but this is just one of the most consistent shows ever, so something has to be ranked lower. Bato of the Water Tribe is my least favorite episode of Avatar, but I still think this is a pretty enjoyable one. Sokka is really funny, and seeing his admiration for his dad and his tribe helps set his future character arc up. The final fight with all three parties is really fun, and I love how they use Appa in the fight. The reason this is last is because it's the only episode I have a clear flaw with, and that's that Aang stealing the coordinates is totally out of character this late into Season 1. I also think Sokka and Katara leaving Aang so easily, especially Katara, is totally out of character and a cheap way to create conflict. I'm really glad they never do stuff like this again, and it's enough for this to be the worst episode of the show. The Great Divide is last for a lot of people, and I kinda get it. It's definitely more filler than any other episode of the show, except the Ember Island prayers, but I still think this episode is pretty funny. Sokka, once again, is always funny, and the tour guide also had a lot of funny moments. I also think the end where Aang tells a made-up story to the two tribes is pretty creative, and I didn't see it coming on my first watch. This episode has no greater purpose, but it's not a bad watch. Avatar Day is pretty stupid and doesn't have a real strong sense of direction, with the plot going all over the place for a lot of the time, but I don't really think that's a bad thing. The plot is absurd, with Sokka and Katara having to free Aang from a corrupt city that burns down Avatar statues Wicker Man style. The Sokka detective stuff is really funny, and I like that they went to Kyoshi Island again, and that Kyoshi actually appeared at the end of the episode. Kyoshi is a really cool Avatar character, and learning more about her is always fun, but especially in the context when she came out, just basically admitting that she killed the town's leader, which was pretty awesome. Imprisoned is just a random Season 1 episode that has some really funny moments and some cool stuff with Katara showing her potential as a leader. Obviously the Momo earthbending joke is hilarious, and the whole idea of fake earthbending is really fun. Haru definitely isn't the most interesting character, but he's a fine plot device. I also like that there's a clear antagonist here with the prison warden. It makes it way more satisfying when he gets obliterated at the end of the episode. The Fortune Teller is one of the most comedy-focused episodes of the show, which is totally fine because I love the comedy in this show. Sokka obviously had the funniest moments, with his constant doubting of the fortune-telling and trying to prove that it's totally absurd. The part where he gets a horrible fortune without it even being checked is so funny. The Aang and Katara romance kinda starts in this episode, and I really like their relationship throughout the story, so seeing their roots for it is really cool. Jet being this low is going to be a scorching hot take, which I usually have at least one of in my rankings, but this one is different because I really like this episode. Like, it's great. It's the first episode of the show that has this sense of maturity and complexity within the characters. Jet is a really well-written side character, and seeing his true goal of killing innocent civilians in order to destroy a Fire Nation town is a shocking moment. Katara's reaction is really well done, and the final fight is great. I like this episode a lot. I just don't think it's a top-tier episode. It's rarely one that I think about, and all the mature themes are better handled in later episodes in my opinion. The Boy in the Iceberg is the first episode of the show, and it does a really good job of pulling you in. We start with Sokka and Katara, instead of introducing the main characters later in the episode. The introduction of Aang immediately shows that he really is just a kid. Sokka is kind of a jerk here, but in a funny and charming way. This episode doesn't do much other than setting up the world and the characters, but those are some of the best parts of the show, so it's a pretty great episode. The Water Bending Scroll is a Season 1 episode that is kind of similar to Bato and the Water Tribe, with Katara being really selfish just like Aang was, but this episode feels way more in character, because I could see Katara doing this. She's very stubborn and cares so much about her own strength, so obviously she's going to want some cool, powerful waterbending scroll. The Zuko and Iroh moments are really funny, especially their stuff with the pirates. The ending where the tile was in Iroh's sleeve is the perfect comedic ending to this episode. The Swamp is definitely a less important Season 2 episode, which is my second favorite season, but I still think this episode is really funny, especially the swamp-dwelling dudes. This show does stereotypes in a way that's funny and also not insulting, which is really rare in media. I like episodes where the main characters are split up, which this one has for a portion of the episode. Toph is kind of introduced as well, and the ending where Aang connects to the whole swamp is a really cool scene. The Ember Island players being this slow might be a hot take, but I think this is as high as it can really go. It's kind of a one-trick pony, and it's a really good pony, but it still just doesn't compare to the great character writing and story that comes with most of the episodes in this show. With that being said, this episode is really funny for the entire time. All the character portrayals on stage are super funny and creative, especially Toph's. I like the romance stuff with Aang and Katara, but it's just handled so much better in other episodes. I like this episode, but similar to other ones below it, it just doesn't have a greater purpose that compares with a lot of episodes in the show. The Avatar Returns is the first episode where we get to see a big fight with Aang, and it sets up how bending is used in combat, which is obviously a massive part of the show. The part where Aang goes into the Avatar state is obviously the best part of the episode. It shows that this series is going to be a lot more than just funny and goofy stuff. It also has some moments of Aang saying he doesn't want to be the Avatar, which is a massive part of the series as well. I think this is where the show really starts to go in the direction that it followed up with for the rest of the series. The Northern Air Temple is one of 3 episodes focused on different air temples. Modern technology taking over the culture of an older place is something that so many shows and movies do, and a lot of the time it's just kind of annoying, but this episode does it really well, as these people are so detached from airbending culture as it's been 100 years, so Aang is the only one that wants to protect it. Seeing Sokka show some smarts is really cool too, as he is a total genius. I also like learning a lot more about the cultures of different bending places, like the Northern Air Temple, and seeing how much Aang cares for it is just really cool. The King of Omashu introduces earthbending and boomy, which are some key elements of the show, especially the earthbending part. This one still has that goofy feel to it that the first few episodes have, but it's pretty funny here with Aang and Boomy just not giving a crap about anything. Except when Boomy kidnaps Sokka and Katara, that was definitely a reasonable crash out from Aang. The different challenges are pretty funny, and the final fight between Aang and Boomy is pretty crazy when you look back on it. Arguably the strongest earthbender versus the damn Avatar. Like, this was a crazy battle. The Waterbending Master is a really good setup for the finale of Season 1, which are some of the best episodes of the season. This one is a bit lower than those ones though, because a lot of it is just introducing the Northern Water Tribe and the people living there. But I do love learning about the cultures of different unique tribes. It's one of my favorite parts of the show, that they take the time to give more depth into the places that they go to, and it really helps the world building. The Yue and Sokka stuff is definitely the most entertaining stuff in this episode. Seeing Sokka hit it off by respecting women instead of being a sexist asshole is really cool and shows his growth. The Paku stuff with Aang and Katara is fine, but he's definitely my least favorite White Lotus member. I'm really glad he wasn't the waterbending master for the rest of the journey, and that Katara took that role from him. Bitter Work is an episode that sometimes slips my mind because there's not a lot of outside conflict, and most of it is just Aang trying to learn earthbending. There's some moments with Toph teaching Aang and struggling to get through to him, which I thought was really cool, because it would have been unrealistic if Toph just immediately was a great teacher. She was sheltered her entire life. The stuff with Sokka and the saber-toothed mouse lion cub was really funny, and seeing Sokka just lose his mind was probably my favorite part of the episode. The part where Aang stands up to Toph and learns earthbending at the end is also really cool. The Warriors of Kyoshi is a really early instance of the great character writing in the show. Sokka enters the show as a total asshole and a misogynist, but he ends the episode with a new respect for women and the realization that they can also be powerful warriors. Suki is nowhere near as entertaining as she is in the later seasons, but she still has a lot of chemistry with Sokka, and seeing her just destroy him was really funny. The Katara and Aang stuff is definitely the weaker part of the episode, but I still think it shows that once again, Aang is just a kid, and seeing him go out of his way to save the village was such a sick moment, and made up for him being kind of a bum earlier in the episode. The Serpent's Pass has one great moment with the baby being born, and Aang starting to come back to normal, and having a really touching moment with Katara. I just love their relationship together, and this is one of my favorite moments in the entire show with them. But the major focus of this episode is just the gang and a family traveling through the Serpent's Pass and dealing with a bunch of conflict. There are a lot of funny moments, especially with Toph and Sokka. It's entertaining, but the main part of this episode that makes it great is the ending scene. Also, ends up that we have back-to-back episodes with Suki, this being the next time she appears in the show. And yeah, Suki is always great, and Season 2 is when she started to become a really cool character, and I just love her relationship with Sokka, and we get to see a lot of that this episode, which is pretty cool. The Winter Solstice Part 1 is the first episode that features the Spirit World, which is obviously a big part of the franchise. Seeing Aang learn how to solve problems as the Avatar by going between worlds is really cool, and is the first real time he does Avatar stuff. The Spirit World scenes kind of carry the episode, as the real world stuff with the village isn't that interesting. The stuff with Iroh and Zuko might be my favorite part of the episode though. Any moments with Iroh as the main character are some of the best, because he's obviously the best. The Painted Lady, I think, is a really underrated episode. A lot of people think this is a mid-episode that's mostly filler, but I think that it further develops Katara and her morals. I love that she's just so caring that she's willing to risk the entire plan to help out the village. I don't think it's out of character, and it just shows who she is as a person. Her relationship with Sokka is also really sweet, and I love when they have moments like they do in this one. It proves that they really do have a great sibling bond, a lot better than the other main sibling bond in this show. This episode is also funny. I think the Shu and Dot guy is kind of funny, even though some people don't. And yeah, I like this one. Nightmares and Daydreams is one of the only later Season 3 episodes that isn't insanely high on the list. I like the episode, but it definitely is a breather and an episode that prepares you for the Eclipse invasion, which is one of the best arcs of the show. It has some funny hallucination humor, and I like that it dives into the pressure of being the Avatar, because that must be insane. Aang is still a kid even this late in the series, and I love that the show never forgets that fact. The Winter Solstice Part 2 is kind of a Part 2 to the first one, but the plots are totally different, and it even takes place in completely different nations. It's the worst two-parter in the series, but it's still really good, and sets up tons of important plot points in the show, and the other Part 2s are some of the best episodes in the entire series. The whole Roku stuff is all really cool, and this episode focuses mainly on that. I especially love the scene where he comes out and destroys all these firebenders. Seeing a fully grown Avatar just beat the crap out of everybody is always fun, even if it's Roku, who kinda sucks. Sokka also shows some early genius here, which is pretty cool. The Avatar State is the first episode of Season 2, and it definitely does a great job of setting up the more mature tone of the season. Seeing Aang constantly get baited into going in the Avatar State is pretty hard to watch, especially when they bring in Katara. The scene where he finally does go into the Avatar State is definitely the best scene of the episode. All of the Avatar State scenes are some of the best in the show, to be honest. And the earthbending guy, even though he was a horrible person, he was kind of funny, and I love seeing Sokka just knock him out at the end. The Southern Air Temple is the first episode of Avatar that focuses on heavy, mature topics, such as mass genocide and grief. It still has the feel of the first few episodes of the show, with a lot of goofy and kiddie stuff, but the ending where Aang finds the dead airbenders and goes into the Avatar State is a really heavy scene and shows the potential that the series has. This one also has the Avatar cycle explained and really just sets the groundwork for all the themes in the series. There's a lot of world building in this one. Momo is also introduced, which is pretty cool because he's the GOAT. The Siege of the North episodes are some of the best in the season, but part 1 is clearly worse than the second one. This is the beginning of the final battle of the season, with all the pieces like Zuko taking Aang and Sokka protecting the princess being set up. It has this sense of dread that the rest of the first season doesn't really have, and is one of the first times where the stakes feel really high. I mean, this is just straight up war for these nations, and you can really feel the intensity. Return to Omashu has Azula, Ty Lee, and Mei fighting together for the first time, and the three girls are some of the best antagonists in the show, largely because of how well they are set up. The main plot of trying to save the people of Omashu from the Fire Nation rule has a ton of great moments, featuring Bumi and Momo, surprisingly. The best part of this episode is the battle stuff though, especially the duel between Aang and Azula. All of their fights in the series are just awesome. The ending where Aang returns a baby is also a really touching moment, and proves that even Fire Nation people have a heart. The way the show humanizes its villains is one of its best parts. The Headband is one of the funniest episodes of the whole show. Aang goes on his own school arc, and I love the way he addresses the Fire Nation people. Flameo Hotman is one of the best phrases from the show. It's also really cool to see these Fire Nation people just chilling and acting like normal people. Not everyone in the nation is Azula or Ozai. Some of these people were just born here and had no choice to end up becoming soldiers. Sokka is also hilarious in this episode, especially with the fake parent stuff. This is a really funny episode that's much needed, as most of the episodes before this were really serious, and a lot of the ones after are also really serious. The Earth King is a weird break between the Long Fang conflict and the Azula conflict that happens at the end of Season 2. It's a much needed break from all the drama, and has some really funny moments, especially with the Earth King and Bosco, who's the GOAT. We also get to see Zuko go through his transformation and get sick, which is the first time we really see Zuko start to turn over to the good side, even if he obviously makes his biggest mistake a few episodes later. The way Iroh helps and supports him in this episode is so great. The Long Fang, more like Long Gone joke, is one of the best lines in the show, and I seriously think they had named him Long Fang just to have Sokka say it. The Blue Spirit is one of the most beloved Season 1 episodes, and I totally see why. The whole sequence where Zuko busts Aang out of prison is really cool. The music is always so good during these intense scenes, and I can't imagine them without it. The ending where Aang saves Zuko and tries to bond with him is such a subtle and great moment, and it helps make their friendship later in the series more meaningful. The fact that Zuko remembers he said that shows that it was just a matter of circumstances that they ended up being against each other in the beginning of the series. The Momo scenes where he keeps bringing the wrong stuff is also really funny, as well as the crazy cat lady. The Runaway is a mostly comedic episode that has a few powerful scenes about found family with Toph and Katara. Toph and Katara have a lot of beef in the group because of their polar opposite personalities, and this is an episode focused entirely on that. The moment where Toph and Sokka bond over their family trauma and both appreciate that Katara does care for them is so sweet and one of my favorite Toph moments. I almost wish the Combustion Man prison stuff didn't happen, because it would have ended on such a great note. While the prison stuff isn't anything special, this episode is also insanely funny, especially the moment where Sokka forgets Toph is blind and writes a letter for Toph to Katara, which is one of my favorite jokes in the series. All the stuff with Hawkeye was really funny, and he should have returned. The Blind Bandit is obviously a key episode because it's the introduction of Toph, the greatest earthbender of all time. A lot of the times character introduction episodes in other shows are pretty bad, and their only purpose is introducing the character, but this episode works on its own because it has an interesting plot as well, with the whole underground tournament and Aang looking for a teacher. Seeing Toph for the first time is the best part though. Her kicking the boulder's ass with her awesome seismic sense power is really cool to see for the first time, and I just love her personality, and whenever she shows moments of vulnerability like she does here, it just makes her even more likable of a character. The boulder is also goated, obviously. City of Walls and Secrets is the introduction to Ba Sing Se, and the whole secret war thing going on is really cool because it's such a different perspective from what we've seen so far in the Earth Kingdom, where most people are terrified of the Fire Nation, and in this city, people don't even care. The most interesting stuff here is Zuko and Iroh working at a tea shop, and Jet trying to expose their firebending. Seeing Iroh and Zuko just be normal people is really fun, because it's such a different setting for them to be in, and such a unique dynamic. And the fight between Zuko and Jet is one of the smoothest and best animated in the show. The Awakening is the first episode of Season 3 and is the perfect introduction to the best season of Avatar. Aang having the scar on his back and looking like a totally different person just shows how much of an effect the ending of Season 2 had on him, and I love that it doesn't just forget about that. The part where Aang goes on his own because he feels like he failed the world is a powerful moment because we as an audience want to see him succeed so bad because we know how much it means to him. But the end shows that he has matured as a person and he's willing to do what it takes to save the world, even if he doesn't like it. The Katara stuff with her father is also really good, and I like that they didn't just make her be totally okay with him leaving them. It's more realistic. Lake Laogai has two different plot lines that are really good, with Aang and the gang infiltrating the secret base of the Dai Li and Zuko finding Appa in the secret base. The Aang stuff is genuinely pretty creepy, as we get to see how powerful the brainwashing of Jet and the rest of the people kept there is. Jet's death scene is a pretty crazy moment when you think about it, like they did as much as you possibly can, hinting at him dying, without it actually saying he did. The best part of this episode is the Zuko and Iroh stuff, especially Iroh's speech. that ultimately helps Zuko free Appa and give up the Blue Spirit mask. Ivo really is just the greatest dude ever. Appa and Aang reuniting at the end is also a really sweet moment, especially after we learn how much Appa and Aang went through before that scene. The Deserter is a really great episode from Season 1, and a perfect example of how to write Aang making a mistake. Aang is a kid, but he's a smart kid and a good person, which is why I find Bato of the Water Tribe to be pretty stupid for his character. But him accidentally burning Katara is a believable action for him. He didn't mean to do it, even though it's pretty hard to watch. You can see how horrible he feels, especially when Sokka tackles him, and his decision to never use firebending again feels like a realistic decision for him, because even though he didn't mean to do it, he still did it, and the blame was pretty much fully on him. I also really like Zhong as a character. I love that they brought him back later on. The idea that there still is Fire Nation soldiers that recognize how dangerous firebending is and how horrible the nation can be is just great writing. And I love that he didn't teach Aang immediately. It took Roku forcing him and being an idiot for him to actually start doing it. The Cave of Two Lovers is one of the most memed and joked about episodes of Avatar, and that's mainly because of the Secret Tunnel song. This is one of the funniest episodes of the show. Every joke with the hippie characters lands, mostly because of Sokka just getting fed up with them being morons. His reactions are all great. The Aang stuff with Katara is also really funny, especially when Aang tries to act like he doesn't want to kiss Katara and just says the dumbest stuff he could possibly say. I love that scene. This episode doesn't have the most interesting writing and is mostly just a comedic episode, but that's fine when pretty much every joke is really funny. The hippies should have came back for the invasion as well, but I think the abrupt ending and goodbye is also like really in character and a really funny moment. The storm being this low is definitely going to be a hot take, but I still really love this episode. It's the first episode of the show where we get some really in-depth character writing with Zuko, as well as Aang. Seeing Zuko's tragic past for the first time with his father totally changes your view on him as a character, even if he's still not the greatest person at this point in the show. Aang's backstory is also interesting, as we get to see more of Gyatso, and also how the monks didn't really treat Aang well at all. It makes it so we recognize that he's partially at fault for what ended up happening, but he can't really be blamed for it, because he was just put in such a hard situation that no kid would really figure out how to be in. I don't have any knocks on this episode though, it's pretty amazing, but so was every episode from here on, so I just can't rank it higher. Still one of the best episodes in Season 1. The episodes past the invasion in Season 3 are all amazing, and the Western Air Temple is one of those. This is where we finally see Zuko join the crew, even if they don't really trust him, other than Toph. I love that they didn't end up believing him immediately, and we're still doubtful. It would have made it really unrealistic if they just trusted him immediately. Zuko needed to prove he was on their side, and he ended up doing that in later episodes. But even though he proved to the viewer that he was good, the gang was still skeptical, rightfully so. Zuko is also just really funny here, like him practicing and just casually introducing himself like an idiot is so funny every time. Avatar just balances comedy and serious moments so well, and this episode is a great example, especially at this point in time of the show where everything is basically fully formed, and the writers knew exactly what they were doing. The Drill is one of the few episodes where it's pretty much just action the entire time, and I totally love it. I love the three girls as antagonists. They're really intimidating in their own unique way, and this is the peak of their fights with the main crew. The Azula and Aang fight is the best part. It has some of the most fluid and sharp animation of the series, and also has really fun and creative moments, especially the ending where Aang finishes off the drill. I'm not really a huge action fan in pieces of media, but this show just does everything so well. We also get to see a lot of Sokka being a great leader here, which he obviously develops into later on in the series, but the signs were always there. This is a great climax of the desert arc with some awesome fighting scenes. The Puppet Master is easily the darkest episode of the show, and I love that it exists. This is pretty much a horror episode with a really scary villain in Hama. This girl is literally crazy. Like, I get she has a tragic past, but I can't justify locking up innocent civilians in a cave. Like, what was she doing with these people? It's actually insane they never even talked about this. The best part is obviously the end, where Katara bloodbends in order to defeat Hama, who straight up almost murdered Sokka and Aang. I love the fact that Hama really ends up winning in this episode, and it ends with Katara crying and feeling horrible about her actions. This is one of the best Katara-focused episodes of the show, and one of the darkest moments in the series, and it's great. and it's made even better with the Southern Raiders episode later in the season. Sokka's Master is finally the Sokka-focused episode that everyone was waiting for. If you couldn't tell by my constant mentioning of him, I love Sokka. I think he has the third best arc in the show behind Zuko and Aang, and he's just a constant comedic presence, and I can't imagine the show without him. I love the moments where he doubts himself and is vulnerable, as he's always so confident. The rest of the gang cheering him up and feeling lost without him shows how he really is the glue of the group. His training with Piandao, I don't remember how to pronounce his name, is really funny and shows how much he's grown as a person. A lot of early Season 3 episodes focus a lot on specific characters and how much they've grown, with the Puppet Master being Katara, the Runaway being Toph, and Sokka's Master obviously being Sokka, and this is my favorite of the bunch. The Siege of the North Part 2 is the best episode of Season 1, and it's this low on the list. This is just an awesome final battle of Season 1 where we get to see Aang really show his potential as the Avatar, but it's not really a fun moment. Seeing him lose control and wreak havoc doesn't feel like him, and it once again proves that being the Avatar is a position that Aang doesn't really want, but he has to because it's his destiny. We also get to see some really cool spirit stuff with Ko, the Face Stealer, and this monkey dude, who's pretty awesome. I wish we got to see more of that guy. The Zuko stuff where he's yapping about going through a lot of stuff is also a great moment. This is definitely the peak of the first season, which is the worst season, but still an amazing season. The Phoenix King is the first part of Sozin's Comet, the finale of the show, and pretty clearly the worst in my opinion. But with that being said, this is still a really amazing episode. The show is just so developed and perfected at this point. Everything is on point constantly. All the characters are grown and nearly done with their arcs. The comedy is perfectly done every time, and the impending doom of the final battle really starts to sink in for the gang and the viewers as we get to see our first real looks of what Ozai is like and his horrible intentions. The inner conflict of whether or not Aang should kill Ozai is something the fanbase can't agree on, but I think he shouldn't kill him. I mean, that wouldn't be a realistic thing for Aang to do. Aang's own happiness and consciousness is much more important to me than the state of the world, if I'm being honest. Melon Lord is also in this episode, which is pretty awesome, obviously. The Chase is such an action-packed and eventful episode that I often forget that it's all in one episode. We get the Fire Nation girls chasing the gang, Appa carrying the group on his back, literally. Toph fights with the group and leaves, only to rejoin after a really touching conversation with Iroh, and we get the final battle, with basically every main character in the show versus Azula, and she still survives somehow because she's just built different. My favorite moment is definitely the conversation between Toph and Iroh, especially when Toph tells Iroh her own advice of telling Zuko that he needs him too. It's a really sweet moment, and shows that Toph is a lot more mature and in touch with her emotions, and she leads on. I also love Appa just being the GOAT for the entire runtime. The Guru is the calm before the storm in the ending of Season 2. We get to see all the main characters seemingly get a happy ending, only for it all to come crashing down later on. Sokka reuniting with his dad is always so touching, with this one maybe being my favorite one, as it's been so long since they've seen each other. Sokka being considered a warrior by his dad is such a subtle and great moment. I also love Katara letting him go, and being a great sister. Aang's stuff with the Guru is really cool, especially when he almost completes his Avatar state, training only to give it up because he cares too much for Katara. He's really just too much of a softie. The cosmic energy line is still hilarious. The best part of this episode is without a doubt Toph just inventing metal bending and saying that she's the greatest earthbender in the world. It's one of the hypest moments in the show, and one of her best moments in my opinion. The desert arc in Season 2 is one of my personal favorites of the show. I just love the locations they go to, and the library is definitely my favorite. I think the Owl Spirit is such a cool character. His design is awesome, and I love the idea that a lot of spirits are pretty selfish, and just not all willing to help the Avatar with his goals. The final fight he had with the gang is really entertaining, and you kind of start to get nervous when Sokka and Aang go back to get the date of the eclipse. This is a key episode for the future of the series, with the eclipse being set up and Appa being stolen from Sandbenders. The researcher guy is also really funny because he's just an idiot. I don't know why, but the shush chatty monkey line always gets me. The Avatar and the Fire Lord is a really awesome backstory episode where we see how the war started. This was a very necessary episode to set up the arc that Zuko goes through in the second half of Season 3. Him learning that his destiny is intertwined with the Avatar and that Roku is his great-grandfather is such a cool moment. Seeing Roku's journey as the Avatar is really fun, and also kind of puts it into perspective that he really sucked at being the Avatar. Like, he so easily could have prevented the war, but just chilled in his volcano house and made Aang clean up his mess. The ending where Roku was betrayed by Sozin after fighting a damn volcano is so awesome. I love that they still humanize Sozin, even after setting him up to be some horrible figure, which he still is, but even he has a sense of humanity in him, unlike Ozai. The Southern Raiders is the best Katara episode in the whole show. Her field trip with Zuko is somehow the worst of the three, but it's still one of the best episodes in the series. I think it works so well because of the similarities Zuko and Katara have. They both had a really rough childhood and lost their mothers due to the cruelty of the Fire Nation. They have equally strong hatred for the people that made their lives so bad. Katara is a great person, but she still holds anger to these people, and seeing her get really angry and vengeful is pretty brutal to watch. Even though she does eventually make the right decision. She says some pretty messed up stuff to both Sokka and Aang, and this is probably her lowest moment. Her turning into Hama and trying to get revenge on the Southern Raiders is a chilling moment, but it totally makes sense, because she needed to let out some of the inner rage that she had. But by the end, she's a better person, and makes up with Zuko, which is a really satisfying moment. Katara isn't my favorite character in the show, but this episode, and her arc as a whole, is amazing. Appa's lost days being this high might be a hot take, but I genuinely think this brought out more emotion for me than like almost any other episode of the show. I love Appa, he's the best. I don't want to see him get hurt and betrayed constantly for 20 minutes, but it's a necessary episode because it makes it so much more satisfying when he ends up reuniting with Aang and the gang. This is an unconventional episode where Appa is the main character, who obviously can't talk, so a lot of this episode is just told by actions and the music, which is done so well. There is dialogue and other stuff going on, like Suki and the Kyoshi warriors, fighting Azula and her friends, but that's just one of many scenarios that Appa gets himself involved with. Seeing Appa caring so much for Aang and traveling across the world to find him is heartbreaking, especially when we get to see them first meeting in a flashback. Appa really is the GOAT, and this episode is a big reason for why I love him so much. The Desert is such an underrated episode to me. Like, people think this one is good, but I think it's phenomenal. It has so much stuff going for it. We get to see Zuko and Iroh go on their own little adventure in the Oasis area, and we get introduced to the White Lotus. The Boulder and the other earthbending teacher guy are at their funniest here as well, but the best part is seeing Aang just lose his mind after Appa gets taken. Him taking out his rage on the Sandbenders was a really powerful moment, and Katara hugging him and bringing him back to Earth is one of the best moments they have together in the show. It shows that Katara cares for Aang on a deeper level than anyone else does, and she's willing to risk her own safety just because she can't bear to see Aang like this. This episode is also peak comedy, with Sokka hallucinating with the iconic cactus juice joke, which is one of the funniest moments in the series, but Toph and her blind jokes are also peaking here. This episode just has a great group dynamic and a lot of powerful moments where we see Aang in a totally different way. It's just great. We're going to get a bunch of Zuko field trip episodes up next, and the Firebending Masters is a damn great one. Zuko and Aang have one of the best and most complex relationships in the show, as they can both relate to having immense pressure and a complicated journey. This is the first time the two of them are together on the same side, and it's a lot of fun. I also love that they gave firebending more depth and made it so it wasn't just the element of rage and destruction. The Sun Warriors and dragons appearing is so cool, and the scene where they surround them has some of the best animation of the show. This is really the episode where we see that Zuko has learned everything, and he has a greater appreciation for the world and bending. But he's still the same hot-headed kid with horrible social skills, and he also has the best character arc in the show, and pretty much any show, to be honest. He's the GOAT. The Boiling Rock Part 1 is slightly worse than Part 2, but it's still really awesome. Once again is a Zuko field trip, this time with Sokka, and I really think he has the best chemistry with Zuko out of the gang. Obviously, this has an iconic "That's rough, buddy" line, which is a masterpiece, but basically every conversation with them is really funny, like the silver sandwich one, and the part where he tells Sokka that he's gonna fail time and time again. The Boiling Rock is also such a cool location for a prison, and Sokka coming up with these crazy schemes is really fun. It just shows how far he's come. Suki comes back, which is also really fun because I think she's the best out of Sokka's relationships. This one doesn't have the high intensity and crazy betrayal moments that part 2 has, but it's still a really awesome episode and one of the best two-parters in the series. Opening off the top 10, we have The Boiling Rock Part 2. The Boiling Rock Part 2 and Part 1 are so closely related to each other that I have a hard time even distinguishing between them. Like, I never remember when the first one ends and the second one begins, but I do know that Part 2 has some of the best moments. The gondola fight scene with Azula and Ty Lee versus Zuko, Sokka, and Suki is really fun, and some of the most high-stakes fighting in the show. Like, they're at a massive volcano thing with scalding hot water underneath them, and they would have died if May didn't save them. And that's the best part of the episode, watching May and Ty Lee finally betray Azula, and Azula miscalculate for the first time. It shows she's not invincible, and it leads to her slow descent into madness. Seeing Sokka and his dad reunite is really fun, and I love that Zuko is fully proving himself as one of the gang. The Day of the Black Sun Part 1, The Invasion, is the weaker of the two Invasion episodes, but it is still phenomenal. The Invasion and Eclipse arc is one of the best in the show. It has peak intensity and character writing, and even though we know it won't succeed, we still want to see these characters finally complete their goal. Seeing all the characters from older episodes come back is really fun, especially the Boulder, who just casually had the greatest character arc ever and turned into a great man. Sokka finally turning into that full-fledged leader that we knew he could be is so awesome and satisfying, and funny as well, because everything he does is funny. The plan for the invasion is so well thought out, and I love seeing it unfold. The Iroh prison stuff is also finally coming to an end here, which is a really cool part of the season. This episode is kind of built up to the Part 2, but it's still amazing. Part 2 just has some more hype moments, and that's why it's above it. The top 8 episodes of Avatar are all 11 out of 10 masterpieces and some of my favorite episodes ever, and The Beach is the first of those. I see some people not liking this episode, which I think is just insane. Like, the character writing here is so good. For every one of the main 4 Fire Nation teenagers, Zuko is at his most confused and angry at this point, and it's so awesome seeing him just unleash all his rage at the end of the episode. The campfire scene is the highlight, obviously, where we dive deep into Ty Lee, May, and Azula's backstory and what made them how they are. My favorite of the 3 is Ty Lee, because I never really liked her before, but this made her so much more layered and interesting. We also get to see the most human side of Azula, with her actually kind of caring for her friends and Zuko in a genuine way, which we've never seen before. This episode is also insanely funny, like one of the funniest. The whole party scene, with Azula being the worst flirter ever, is just amazing, and Zuko also being the worst boyfriend ever is hilarious. This is an entire episode focusing on humanizing these Fire Nation antagonists, and it's some of the best writing of the whole show, and I love it. Zuko Alone is the first episode in Avatar that is a true masterpiece of writing. People absolutely adore this episode, and I totally get it, because I do as well. Zuko is my favorite character. It's not a hot take, but I think he is the best written character in the show. His arc is done so well, and takes so much time, and never feels rushed. He doesn't just switch sides after one moment. He does good things, he does bad things, and in the end his transformation feels so natural and well earned. Zuko Alone is the middle part of this arc. He's no longer a stupid kid, with only one goal in mind. He's more complicated, he's more confused, and he's also more kind. He's still not the great man that he becomes, but there's signs there, and it's totally understandable why he ended up becoming that stupid kid originally. His backstory with Azula and the rest of his family is heartbreaking. Zuko was just a kid, similar to Aang, when so many horrible things happened to him. He was lied to, manipulated, and rarely shown the love he deserved. But Zuko Alone proves that he is a good person at heart. He helps out the Earth Kingdom family, and stands up to the cruel bullies that remind him of the Fire Nation. This episode has a kind of cowboy and western feel to it, which adds to the loneliness and pain the episode brings. I don't think Zuko's character arc would be as satisfying and powerful if it wasn't for Zuko Alone. The Tales of Ba Sing Se is probably the most famous and iconic episode of the show. There's no other episode like it, where we see a bunch of different characters get their own little stories that aren't really connected to each other. I think I'm just gonna rank the tales, that's the best way to talk about it. The worst is pretty easily Sokka. It's funny, don't get me wrong, but a lot of these are really powerful and emotional, so a couple of funny literature jokes won't get you really far. The tale of Aang is pretty cool because it's just Aang being the kid that he is while still doing his avatar duties. It has a bunch of cool animal hybrids too, which is pretty awesome. The tale of Momo is pretty emotional. Despite being about a cute little lemur, his genuine bond for Appa is really sweet, and I just find it so cool that these animals get such in-depth character arcs and also have feelings for each other. Momo is also just a goat. The tale of Toph and Katara gives a lot of subtle depth to Toph, which I always love to see. Katara really cares for Toph as a person, more than anyone else in the gang, which is why she can sometimes be hard on her. The moments where Toph lets down her walls and acts more like the young girl she is are really touching, and this is one of my favorites. The tale of Zuko is definitely the funniest tale. Zuko trying to give this girl compliments and being a lovable dumbass is so funny. I love how Iroh tries to always support him and lead him to living a normal teenage life. The girl is also really cool, and I wish we saw more of her. The lantern lighting and the "it was nice" at the ending both make me smile every time. And the best is the tale of Iroh. The most famous scene in the show is him singing Leaves from the Vine and breaking down crying while celebrating his son's birthday. It's a heartbreaking moment, seeing this lovable man who wants nothing but to support and help everyone that crosses his path really break down over something that means so much to him. I have a strong connection to pieces of media that focuses on found family and the loss of family members, because when it's done tastefully, it can really be devastating and heartbreaking. And this absolutely is. Every time I hear a note of that damn song, I immediately get goosebumps, and it is not okay. The Day of the Black Sun Part 2 has two amazing plot lines, with Zuko confronting his father, and Aang, Sokka, and Toph chasing after Azula. This is just some of the most peak and intense action moments of the show, with some awesome character writing hammered in between it all. Azula action scenes are still absolutely amazing every time. She does it all with that evil ass smile. It's so freaking good. This one is one of my favorites too, because she's not even fighting, she's just using her insane manipulative skills. I love Azula as a villain because she is just so ruthless and isn't a simple, strong, and evil villain. She has tons of other skills like manipulation that makes her even more intimidating. She is the best antagonist in this show, and I don't think it's close. The best part of this episode is definitely Zuko confronting his father though. It was long awaited for so many episodes and seasons, and so many painful mistakes and Zuko moments, especially the ending of season 2. The part where he admits his uncle has gotten to him is so sweet. Zuko really is just a big softie under all those walls. Him declaring all his motives to his father straight up is so badass. He has nothing to fear anymore, and he knows his own destiny, not the one his father tried to give to him. And of course, him redirecting lightning using Iroh's technique is one of the most epic and satisfying moments in the whole show. Sozin's Comet Part 2, The Old Masters, was a pretty hard episode to rank for one big reason. It has my favorite scene in the whole show, and one of my favorite scenes in all of fiction. I think the scene where Meruem and Komugi play Gungi for the final time, and basically the entire final hour of Return of the King, are the only things that compare to the reunion of Zuko and Iroh. I cry every time, I admit it. It's instant goosebumps and tears whenever the music soars and they embrace in a hug. It's just so insanely satisfying after Zuko finally became the man that Iroh always knew he could be. He finally found his own destiny of helping the Avatar and saving his nation, instead of chasing after the destiny his father gave to him. Zuko was burned and scarred for life the last time he broke down apologizing, but this time he was forgiven immediately because Iroh truly loves him. No matter how he turned out, he has an unconditional love for him. "I was never angry with you, I was sad because I was afraid you'd lost your way," is the best line in the show, and the voice acting from Greg Baldwin and Dante Bosco is perfect. It's just a perfect ending to Zuko's arc, and I can't imagine it ending in a way that wasn't Zuko and Iroh crying in each other's arms. With that being said, a lot of this episode is just searching for Iroh and Aang talking to past avatars, which is really cool and awesome, but it just hurts the episode from being in the top 3. I still love this episode though. The Crossroads of Destiny is the biggest gut punch of an episode in all of Avatar. It's the Empire Strikes Back of Avatar. It ends in the worst possible way imaginable. We go through 2 seasons of Zuko becoming a better man through the help of Iroh, only to see him get manipulated by Azula into turning on him in the last second. It's heartbreaking, and easily Zuko's lowest moment. It also features some of the best action in the show, with Katara and Aang pairing up to take on the Dai Li and Azula and Zuko, and it's as intense as possible. The stakes have never been higher, and Aang even dies at the end, and would have been dead if it wasn't for Katara's magic water. Katara and Zuko bonding in the Crystal Cave area is really powerful because of the similar things they've gone through, which is later explored in Season 3 with episodes like the Southern Raiders. You can tell that Zuko thinks he's doing the right thing. He hasn't gone to the bad side, he's just as confused as ever, and Azula got the last words in on him. The final moment of Aang going into his final chakra only to get shot down by Azula and seemingly never be able to go into the Avatar state again is one of the most shocking and scary moments in the series. This is the lowest moment for both Zuko and the gang, which makes the triumphs and victories of Season 3 all the more satisfying, and we're going to get to that with the top 2 episodes. Listen, the best 2 episodes of Avatar are pretty comfortably the last 2 in my opinion, and I don't think I ever even thought about that going into this ranking. Sozin's Comet, Part 3, Into the Inferno, is where the build-up for the entirety of the series leads to, and it blows away any expectations that you could have. Aang vs. Ozai is the best fight in the series. The animation is unbelievable, the music is intense and epic, it leaves you on your feet the entire time. It's not a cakewalk for Aang. He goes through struggles, especially in this episode, but most of them are internal, as he doesn't want to end his life. It sums up who Aang is as a person in such a powerful way. The plot of Suki, Sokka, and Toph destroying the airships is definitely the funniest part of the final battle. Like, Toph still has her awesome blind jokes, Sokka is Sokka, the comedic genius, but there's also some touching moments. I especially love when Toph starts crying when she thinks they're going to die. It shows that she's not as hard-boiled as she leads on. The stuff with the soldiers and the birthday is also hilarious, and of course the Agni Kai between Zuko and Azula is the ultimate sibling battle that everyone knew was going to happen, but was still insanely hyped for. It's a beautiful scene, maybe more than Aang and Ozai, because we know more about these 2 characters and their relationship. Seeing Azula go insane and start lashing out on everyone is genuinely scary, because we've never seen Azula not calm and composed. It makes the Agni Kai more intense and also poetic as the siblings went on polar opposite character arcs. Zuko learned everything and gained friends because of it, while Azula learned nothing about kindness and compassion and was left completely alone. This would be the best episode of 99% of TV shows. Sozin's Comet Part 4, Avatar Aang, is a masterpiece in literally every way. It's the best episode of the show, and I don't really see too many people arguing against that. Everything, and I mean everything, peaked here. The gang finally did it. It's a similar level of closure to Lord of the Rings or the original Star Wars trilogy, except even better because of how much these characters went through. First off, the final battle between Aang and Ozai, where Aang turns into the ultimate avatar and absolutely obliterates him, and then uses energy bending, is totally awesome, and one of the coolest scenes of the show. It's impossible for me to blink during that scene whenever I watch it happen. It's just so entrancing in a way. The Katara and Azula battle is also really satisfying, but also sad. Azula's voice actor, Grey Delisle, really put her all into it, and you can tell. The old men taking back Ba Sing Se has some really cool, awesome moments, especially with Iroh, of course, and the Toph, Suki, and Sokka stuff is still really fun and awesome. But the best part of this episode is the epilogue stuff after the battle. If you're not smiling ear to ear for the entire time, then you're crazy. Like, seeing everyone just be happy together after going through so much, especially Aang and Zuko, is so satisfying and makes every moment of conflict feel worth it. The coronation ceremony gives me chills every time, especially when Aang tells Zuko that they're friends. The Sokka drawing stuff is the perfect ending to the gang. It makes it both funny and it gets you teary-eyed. And I love that everyone just hangs out with each other at the end. Literally everyone's there. And the final intimate moment between Aang and Katara is so beautiful, especially because of the soundtrack. Seeing the little blushes just proves that once again, these guys are just kids, but they've matured so much, and you have been there with them the entire time. And that's why this show is an absolute masterpiece.